Welcome everybody for streaming live on YouTube and in our Zoom meeting. This is the very first Dental Implant Registry's webinar recorded April 29th, 2025. For everyone here early, we're not too and maybe ask a quick question or two before we begin. With their housekeeping, the session is being recorded and we'll upload this to YouTube after the end of the session. So you will be able to go back over any information and get back up to date with the DIR. We'll also be accepting questions via chat, both within Zoom and on YouTube. So if you dump in any questions to the chat, we'll answer them towards the end of the show. A couple of questions we wanted to ask today. If you're on Zoom, a survey will come up very shortly. If you're on YouTube, just type your comments into the chat. Which of the following best describes you? We're trying to understand who's coming into the stream today, and that allows us to better tailor our future webinars. So if you're a medical practitioner, dentist, lab technician, patient, part of the other parts of the dental industry, please let us know. Second question we'd like to ask is, which is the biggest challenge you're experiencing within the dental implants today? For example, is it identifying implant devices accurately when you're trying to remove them or do maintenance within a patient's teeth? Or are you trying to ensure data completeness and accuracy within your records within your own practice? We'd love to know the answers to those two questions. Let us know in chat or in the survey and Zoom coming up very shortly. We'll be back with you in about 2 minutes' time to start. We'll catch you very soon.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Alastair Goss, and it's my great pleasure to be your host for this, the first Dental Implant Registry webinar. We have a number of topics with a number of speakers that we're going to cover, and you can see at the end there's opportunity for questions. To introduce the members of the panel, firstly there's Dr. Steve Soukoulis, periodontist and the instigator and chief investigator for the Dental Implant Registry. There's then Dr. Scott Davis, prosthodontist based in Port Macquarie, who's also the immediate past president of the Australian Dental Association. I'm an academic oral and maxillofacial surgeon with a particular interest in registries. I've been heavily involved with the Orthopaedic Association's joint registry, the ANZOM's Temporomandibular Joint Registry, and the DIR. Our next speaker is Ramon Baba, who is a practicing oral maxillofacial surgeon with a great interest in implants. And finally, but not least, we have Rowan, who is CEO of a laboratory company, who's going to talk to us from the laboratory aspects. So let's start off with defining the problem. What implant is this and how does it fit in the wider scheme of things? You'll see there that in Australia and New Zealand, there's about 32 million or so of us. There's about 29,000 dentists serving it. And if you then look at the number of implants placed per year, and this is a guess estimate based on market figures, there's about 420,000 implants placed every year, which, to put it mildly, is one hell of a large number. So who places dental implants in Australia and New Zealand? General dentists. At least 2/3 of all general dentists place implants. Some a lot, some a few, some just the implant, mostly just the superstructure. You then come to the specialists, who are all very active in implant management, with the prosthodontists predominantly replacing the abutments and crowns, but some place implants. And then the surgical specialities, who primarily put in implants and refer things off to others for the abutment and the crown preparation. And the numbers are pretty similar across Australia and New Zealand. Let's now look at regulatory requirements for medical devices. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a nice hip replacement. And if you look at the requirements for medical devices, they must be placed by specialists. All patients, when they have an implant placed, are given a patient implant card or PIC, and on that it tells the patient exactly what type of implant they've got and what its specifications are. So if they move on, then they can tell other professional colleagues exactly what they've got. And the results of these are measured by independent registries. Altogether, there are over 200 medical device registries in Australia, ranging from the Joint Replacement Registry, which has over 2 million devices on its situation, through to coronary stents, through to numbers of ventilators in ICU and so forth. So medically, things are very well regulated and reported. If you then come to dentistry, the situation with dental devices is quite different. Certainly, there's a requirement that these are placed by dental professionals. It's also a requirement that they're placed by the devices have TGA registration, so you can't just put homemade ones in. But after that, there are absolutely no regulatory requirements. So that means for some, there's good follow-up. For many, there's none, and there's no regulations to follow. But we think that that's going to change as we catch up with our medical colleagues. And to talk about that, it's my pleasure to introduce Steve Soukoulis, who's going to talk about the requirements for registries.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the intro. Tonight I'll be covering three concepts, which include why we need a registry, how does a registry work, and what are the benefits to those involved in the dental implant supply chain. Next. Next. Firstly, let's look at why we need a registry. Certainly, we need to be able to identify implants that present in our clinical practice, and in some cases can be fairly regularly. This can be difficult and time-consuming process and affect the treatment process and outcomes for patients. Happens to us on a regular basis where we have an implant that we have to be placed. It's close to another implant, and ideally we'd like to include that other older implant in the treatment plan, but it's not always possible to do so. Secondly, we need to move to a more evidence-based clinical practice that overtakes opinion. Certainly, there's an art form to implant dentistry, but we need to work from a foundation that's agreed upon by the largest number of clinicians and scientists that are associated with implant dentistry. Next. If we look at the slide closely, it's an issue that can be quite overwhelming. There are approximately 600 manufacturers of implant-related or dental implant-related products and about 12,000 products that are manufactured on a yearly basis around the world. It's quite daunting to try to identify those, and particularly if you're someone new to implant dentistry, you find it's insurmountable. And as I've been lucky to be involved in lots of education around dental implants, some of the younger players do come to me and ask me how we manage to negotiate this landscape. Moreover, if you think about sort of identifying implants in relation to something that presents in your practice, the old adage was, "Hey, look, I'll take a PA and I'll share it to a number of forums, and hopefully someone tells me what that implant is." That doesn't necessarily mean that you understand what the prosthetic components are and the screws and the insertion torque associated with that. When we understand that about 40 to 50% of those implants are restored with third-party or aftermarket devices, which may be necessary at the time. Next. The other side of the coin is that we also look at the need for registry science, and as Prof was saying before, the medical fraternity have really moved on in leaps and bounds, and we've seen some of the massive progress that's been made through the joint registry, and so our aspirations are to be somewhat like that registry. And the only way to do that is to scientifically record and analyze information and then disseminate that information. And so there have been a number of different articles, particularly it's ramping up. It's interesting and very positive to see that a number of researchers and authors have published articles calling for the need for a register or a registry. And I'll talk about the difference in a moment. There are differences between the two. Next. So how does the current dental implant registry work? There are two arms of the registry. One is that it is a register of devices via an online application, and the other half of the coin is that it is a scientific registry. So we record information about devices and provide that to clinicians and patients. And then the other side is to look at the information that's captured and then start to analyze that information. Next. So if we look a little bit closer at the application, and this is something that we wanted to ensure that clinicians who have all of the accurate information at the time of treatments are the ones that are entering the data. There was a bit of talk about, should patients be allowed to do this or not? But after much thought, we really felt that clinicians should be entering the information or the data. And so some of the things that we capture include obviously dental implants, the prosthetic devices that go in with those components. So you can have, if someone's at the end has a dental implant, they'll have two registrations, one for the implant and one for the abutments. But involved also with that is that we capture information on bone graft materials, soft tissue graft materials, sorry, and some of the processes that go in play with the placement of those implants or those prosthetics. So, for example, was it an immediate implant? Was it a delayed implant? And so on. So once that information is entered, the application then creates what is basically a digital patient implant card. And then that is disseminated to the patient. So immediately when a patient registration created, a patient will have an email that they receive in the inbox, and that will give them access to their information immediately. The patient can disseminate that information in the future with another treating clinician. The clinicians themselves can also do that between a team where you have a team approach between another restorative dentist or laboratory. That can be done at any time. And then obviously there's some privacy issues associated with that and also cyber security that's associated with that. So no one can see your information. A patient can't be looked up. You need to have multiple identifiers and have a one-to-one relationship with the patient to find that patient. And if you are a clinician in the future that sees the patient 10, 20 years later, that patient has to give you authority to access their records. So we'll try to keep it as confidential, but allow for the dissemination of information in a safe way. Next, thanks. On the other side, sorry, I forgot. There's one thing that we recently discussed with the board, and given this is the first DIR webinar that we're doing, we felt that we should include a significant announcement. So in the past, registrations for dental implants and abutments carried a fee with our registry. Moving on from today, there will be no cost for patients or clinicians. So we're hoping that this has a number of benefits to the industry, and namely patients, and the fact that we don't want anyone not to benefit from having a registration or the science to not benefit from having the information, and eliminate some of the barriers associated with the administration that was previously required to affect those registrations. Next. If we look at the registry side of things, so we've previously were talking about the register of devices. This is talking about sort of how do we manage that data information and then what do we do with it. And so moving forwards, we're looking at providing an annual report, which is a DIR annual report to the profession that can be accessed by the public and anyone within the supply chain. We're moving to also provide dental professionals with reports and a dashboard. You're able to see your information and even compare that to other DIR users. That's de-identified information, of course, and just get a sense of how you're tracking in the world. What are you using? What are other people using? It's always beneficial to go back and review your practices. Next. If we look at some of the benefits to the supply chain, broadly, there's certainly the improvement in communication and transparency with patients. Now, I had a patient recently that came to me and said, "Look," and I hadn't said anything about the registry to her. She asked me, "Do you have a registry for dental implants?" And I looked at her and said, "Oh, why do you ask?" And she said, "Look, my brother is a physician, and he's heard about the joint registry and was wondering if there was an equivalent." So patients are asking for their information and want to know what we're placing in their bodies, and this is becoming more and more of a common discussion. The other benefits also provide that as we mentioned before, is that there's some evidence-based decisions that are made by clinicians and manufacturers and so on. And then we have an efficient process in terms of post-market surveillance. At the moment, we have better tracking of airbags in Australia than we have of dental implants. So we're hoping to improve that process. Next. So if we drill down into who the sort of beneficiaries of the registry and some of the activities that we're carrying out at the moment are, and we look at some of the dental professional laboratories, certainly there's an elimination of time wasted trying to identify components. Everyone that's involved in that restoration and that replacement knows exactly what the accurate information of that implant is. This can be quite helpful, as Rowan will mention in a moment, from a laboratory perspective. You definitely get to meet your regulatory requirements. So instead of entering data into your clinical notes, and it's quite laborious, the process of registering implants quite fixed and is sitting somewhere between the 1 to 2 minute mark. That information can be saved in the patient management system and can be disseminated, as we mentioned. The other issues or benefits can also be that clinicians can understand a little bit more about what works and what doesn't work at the patient level, at the implant level, and adjust their treatment plans, and then also recommend to patients one treatment over another, given their risk profiles. From a patient perspective, obviously, the outcome of all of the activities that we have in the registry are to improve patient outcomes. And so patients are certainly benefiting from some of the activities. The other thing is that, as I said before, because we've eliminated the costs, we're not trying to preclude anyone from the benefits of that. Long term also, we're certainly interested in that the mouth is connected to the rest of the body, so we want to see how does patient health and medications and medical histories affect our outcomes. In terms of the regulators, it's certainly a cost-effective way to track and trace implants and provide a more robust post-market surveillance system. And then in terms of the manufacturers, there's a reduced cost and there's basically zero cost to them in terms of providing patient implant cards, which we feel we're certainly moving towards. Many countries around the world require their dental implants to be for their patients that receive dental implants to be provided with the patient implant card. And so we feel that's somewhere where Australia will eventually get to. And so utilising the registry then ticks that box from a regulatory perspective. And obviously having a way to track newer implants that are put into the market by manufacturers can be done with the registry to provide information that they may not have access to. So overall, basically everyone in the supply chain has some benefit. And I'll move on to the next slide.
Now, my pleasure to talk with you about the results that we have to date. So if you look at our current situation, we have across Australia and New Zealand nearly 5,000 patients registered with about 9,500 devices. And these usually are in people, as you'd expect, older, over the age of 60, and certainly predominance of females. You look at the dental implant devices, and I'm only going to present Australian data because we have ethics for them, and New Zealand ethics is pending. So again, we have 2,500 odd patients, over 4,000 implants, and a lesser number of abutments and crowns. If you look at where these implants are placed, then I'm sure it won't surprise you that predominantly these are in the anterior maxilla and posteriorly in the first molar region, both in the maxilla and in the mandible. If we look at the dental go back, If we look at the abutments, you can see that we have a lesser percentage of abutments, and that's mainly because our registry is predominantly specialist driven at the moment, but we do want to encourage increase on abutments and prostheses, and you can see the distribution of them there. We then look at, for example, grafting procedures. 64% of the implants placed have had grafting, and you can see there the regions of the mouth where grafting is placed. And we've also noticed that in our preliminary assessment, grafted implants do have a greater level of issues. If you look at our overall replacement data, and that is that an implant has been placed and then at some stage in the first 5 years has been removed and replaced, overall there's a very acceptable level of 2% replacement. So we know how successful these are. It's now my pleasure to introduce Ramon to talk from his experience as an active user of the DIR.
Thanks, Prof. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Yeah, I've been using, Steve tells me I was a fairly early user of the registry. I've been using it since 2019, and it's sort of become a core part of what we do these days with implants. One of the problems, the issue, I'll talk about the issues that I face, and I imagine many surgeons with a similar practice to mine face, and then sort of how it's been helpful in some ways. One of the top issues for us is just really complicated non-standard cases. Cases where there's been a lot of previous treatment, not necessarily implant treatment, but other treatment. And sometimes things haven't gone well. Sometimes patients aren't very enthused. They're feeling down about it. I mean, I'll show you, I think I can, hopefully I can show this. I mean, does it show? No.
It's not showing too well, Ramon, so keep looking.
There we go. This, oh man, it's not working.
No, not working.
Not working. Anyway, I had an unusual case, a patient that's being managed in my practice right now with a very unusual implant setup because of previous surgery. So making sense of all this, identifying previously placed fixtures, and just having something to talk to patients about, to say, well, look, you know, let's look into this, let's see what we can do, has been something that offered some hope for the future, that these really tricky cases that I sort of see will have some more uniform data and more reliable information than just my memory, which is vague, full of errors, and my gut feeling. And definitely I would say another problem is the need to send out letters really fast. You know, referring doctors really want their letters really fast. It's really hard to write a really clear and concise letter that has all the information that someone wants. I think bundling a DIR report with the letters has been a huge time saver if you can make that part of your standard process. And once you sort of integrate it, you have to apply your practice procedures to using this new functionality. And I think it's really helped. It standardizes the information. It makes it speedier communication. It's more reliable. And I think holds a lot of promise for the future. And I think that in the 6 years that I've been using it, I have seen improvement in the data, the range of data. I think that the changes that Steve's mentioned about making the system more accessible with no fees to patients is a real improvement, and that they're working on improvements in the data capturing and the registration. And, you know, my personal vision for the future, I would really love to see DIR become more than just a registry, but like a really useful universal resource, not just with capturing your own patient's data, but seeing trends, understanding the landscape, helping people work out what's going on in implant dentistry, because there's a lot of information out there and it's always from a single perspective, but the registry has the capability that you could perhaps find something. Maybe you could look up information about the implant. You could look up schematics. You could look up the types of prosthetics. You could educate yourself. And I think there's a huge potential there in the future. And so I'm really happy to continue to use it. And I think my patients are happy because they sort of see the value and the utility. They like the idea of being able to find that information for themselves, even if they're not that enthused about it at the start. Later on, it's sort of a few of them have made mention of it. So yeah, I'm happy to be a supporter. I look forward to seeing more of it, and I think it would be great to see more people participating and contributing.
Good, thanks, Ramon. Thanks very much indeed for your insight. It's now my pleasure to introduce a man who probably needs no introduction to most dentists across Australia, Scott Davis, who's going to give his input.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Prof. Welcome everyone who are watching this live and those who may watch it later on. It might not be surprising to you that my angle is the prosthetic goals of a registry, being a prosthodontist. I think everyone who has been involved with restoring dental implants and being frustrated by patients who present with either an unrestored implant or a failing prosthesis know the challenges of dealing such cases. Often the patient and the referring dentist don't know any details about the implant or the prosthesis, the company, the brand, the size, the connection. Are the prosthetics original manufacturer's equipment or not? Plus an increasing problem with what screw was used and what driver is compatible with it. You'll see from my first slide that there's probably 16 different drivers in just that one kit. And it can take quite a while to determine what's an appropriate driver, which is just a waste of clinical time and effort. The addition of angle correcting screws and drivers has increased the complexity of that issue. They've added to the value of restorative dentistry by reducing cementation, but they've also added to complexity. Wouldn't it be ideal to have information you seek on a registry so you could be prepared before the patient sits in your chair? You may consider it inconvenient to record this information. However, we will all benefit by having that information readily available. It achieves several goals. It facilitates appropriate care for patients, reduces the time and effort to prepare for and provide your treatment. It allows you to have the products available to deliver your treatment in advance, and finally goes a long way to meeting your requirements of complying with the essential principles of the TGA. And I'm often asked the question, what do you have to do to comply with the essential principles of the TGA? As the registry implements new methods to simplify recording product information, such as QR codes on packaging, which come from European implants now and soon will be worldwide, it's a very simple matter to scan a QR code and it will download all the subsequent lot number, batch number, use by dates, etc., in a single click of a button on your phone. Most of the data could be easily entered by our staff if appropriately trained. Additionally, this information will simplify recording and reporting adverse outcomes, which is also a requirement of the TGA. Next slide, thanks. If we can reduce complications, we can improve patient treatment outcomes, reduce conflict with patients, improve patient satisfaction, and make care more cost-effective for both the patient and the clinician. Finally, Australian dental laboratories have an opportunity to record data on the registry, which is a boon for the dentists as they provide the prosthesis for us. It means less work for you, the dentist, that facilitates accurate data recorded for any future care or replacement. Thank you. Back to you, Prof.
Good, thank you, Scott. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Rowan, who's very heavily into the laboratory side of the industry. So thank you, Rowan.
Thanks, Prof. Yeah, I'd like to just start with my introduction to the DIR, which was roughly about 6.5 years ago. I was introduced to it when I was working for an implant company selling dental implants. So I've had many years of experiencing the challenges that dental laboratories, as well as practices and dental specialties have. So the main problems with dental labs and what we face at the moment is a lack of information, especially the lack of information we receive from practices when we are restoring implant cases. There are many variables when it comes to implant restorative work, from single right the way through to full arch work. Having the right information from the beginning of the case is imperative. It allows us to restore with confidence, and it also allows us to give the practice the confidence that they're going to receive the right prosthetics. Often we receive impressions or scans without much information. Nowadays, there are a multitude of third-party companies out there that don't sell dental implants, but they sell third-party abutments. And it's okay to use those as a get-out-of-jail card, but it would be good to be able to record those as well. The lack of information results in a loss of time, wrong components ordered, and even worst case scenario resulting in remakes. We all know that remakes is not a very comfortable conversation to have with your patients, and likewise for us to have with our dentists and dental specialists. Being able to be involved in the dental registry and having quite a few customers that use the dental registry, it definitely allows us to start the case with confidence. It takes the guesswork out of these cases, and it also eliminates the excess phone calls backwards and forth from us to the practice. Speaking to the nurse, speaking to the receptionist, them having to speak to the dentist. We can eliminate that, which I'm sure the majority of you practitioners would prefer. For example, this week we received a 3-unit bridge on 2 implants, and it was multi-units were used, and we were asked to do this 3-unit bridge. And majority of systems have one platform with multi-units, and this particular case actually had a wide platform as well as the standard platform, and it was accompanied with the DIR registration. So we had that information from the beginning, and we could select the right abutments and finish off the job. If we didn't have that registration, who knows if we would have assumed to have all of them as the standard platform. It just takes the guesswork out of it. It also allows us as a lab to monitor our geographical reach. We can request or receive printouts and see where our abutments are going, interstate, locally, what areas. So that's also a really fantastic tool if you're wanting to use that for sales, whatever you might want to use that for. It also allows us as a lab, like Scott had mentioned, to monitor our component behaviors, like a lot of the practitioners would like to monitor the dental implants and how they behave long term. For us, we want to do the same with the components. We want to be able to evaluate them long term and work out what's working and what we can change to make things better for the patients. In conclusion, having worked with practices that use the DIR and practices that don't at this stage, as a busy laboratory, receiving the exact implant details definitely allows us to have a smooth process and a desired outcome. Thank you.
Good. Thanks very much indeed, Rowan, for your perspectives. We now come to the exciting bit, and that's questions from the floor as to what's occurring. So we've got some questions there to show. So there's one great question. As a patient, I'm concerned about the security of my data. Is my data safe? So we'll start off with Steve. What's your response to that common question?
Thanks for the question. That is a major concern. And when we first had created the registry, that was literally one of the questions I got straight out of Facebook that came straight to my phone. And it was like, what happens with the information? What happens with the data? So the registry, for 99% of the purposes of our activities, we de-identify data, particularly on the registry side of things. And there's only a handful of people that actually have access to raw data. As I mentioned before, you can't go into the registry application and search for a patient willy-nilly like Mary Smith. That doesn't happen. You need multiple identifiers. So that means that you have a one-to-one relationship with the patient. And then the data that we store are stored on Amazon service here in Australia, and in what the IT guys do, a pretty safe and secure environment. So I think Scott had some pretty good points the other night about sort of this thing. So I might hand over to Scott in relation to this topic.
Good idea.
Thank you, Steve. Firstly, I believe the data on the registry is a lot more secure than the data on most of your dental practices systems. It started with the intent of security. If someone's going to steal data from a source, a database, there has to be value in the theft of that for them to put the physical effort in. It's not exactly a sexy or blackmailable offence to find that someone had chosen a Nobel Pharma implant over a Straumann. It's not data people are actively seeking to steal. However, given all of that, there is very stringent privacy regulations and processes to protect this data and to give patients and practices confidence that it's a very professional organisation. Thank you.
Certainly, I think security is an issue which we see every day on the television where things are stolen, but I can assure people that the data here is very secure. We have perhaps another question come through. The question is, can patient information be accessed if a patient is deceased to assist with dental identification? There's one who's worked in forensics. I'll start with that. You've got a fairly long process through, which starts off with an authorised request from either the coroner or the police. You can then look to identify the type of medical device, whether it's a hip replacement or a dental implant. So you need to know the type. And if obviously the patient is recorded on a registry, then you can join the dots and put it through. But obviously that information would only be from appropriate request and not from a curiosity type question. So Steve or Scott, what do you think about that one?
Well, I'd like to contribute that it has been a goal in forensics that dental prosthetic devices, in particular dental implants, be identifiable for the purpose of identifying bodies in mass disaster events, etc. So the fact that it can be done goes a long way towards the goals of forensics. There was micro lasering of implants thought at one stage might be able to identify them. It was found to be impractical. So this is just another tool in helping families in tragedies have their family member identified. So I think this is a valuable thing, not a problem.
Good, thank you. We have other questions there? The question is there an advantage for labs to enter data into the DIR, even if the dental practice isn't? Is this even possible? So, Rowan, have you got some commentary on that?
Yes, so it is possible, provided we have permission from the patient and the clinician. We do, and I do like to try register the components that we use. And there is an advantage of this for the simple reason is if the patient decides to move on to another practice or moves interstate, they can always log on or give the permission to their new practitioner to log on and find out exactly what abutment was used, what screw was used.
Steve, you got commentary on that? Is it possible?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Prof. So a laboratory is registered in sort of lieu as a dental practice, and then that laboratory can register components on the registry. As Ron said, in the past, the registration process for laboratories is a bit more complicated because of cost and the consent process, but because we've eliminated the cost and the consent process has become more streamlined, it's making it much, much easier for laboratories to jump on board and get the process carried out.
Good, thank you. Have we another question there come in? Question here is, I want to start using the DIR data, DIR to enter data. How can I get started? So I'll pass that one to Steve.
As I mentioned before in the presentation, there are no software programs to download or so on. You just basically navigate to the website and then register your interest. There is a sort of onboarding process where we need to register the practice and get the details of the people that we're utilising the registry. As we said, it's important that clinicians are entering data and it's done in a contemporaneous and accurate way. And so there's a little bit of staff training, probably takes 10, 15 minutes to train up staff. So it's not a huge training process, but it's important to understand the process. And then from there, the clinicians can utilize a laptop or a computer. For me, it's quite beneficial if I'm sitting in a theatre somewhere. I can register and I can have assistants register components on the registry when I log in. So I like to do it straight away. Some practices collate their information and then register batches of implant components at the end of the week or the month. And so it allows you to do whatever you like. But from my perspective, I'd rather get it done sooner than later. Other practices like to defer it. But it allows for anyone to access the registry that's part of the registry to register components at their time that's convenient.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank all of you for being involved in this webinar, and I leave the final word to Steve.
Thanks, Prof. Look, I'd like to acknowledge there's a huge effort in bringing something like this together over many years, and I'd like to thank the DIR team. I'd like to thank the scientific board and the DIR board, including Prof and Scott and Rowan for your support for such a long time, and Ramon. We've been really, it's been a pleasure to work with you and get your feedback on how we can make things better. But I think, working together as a profession, we can certainly bring the standard of implant dentistry up to a reasonable, which already is a reasonable level, but to a higher level. And ultimately, the outcomes for patients will be improved and for clinicians as a whole. So I think hoping to work with many people to improve outcomes for patients in the long term.
So everybody, thank you and good evening.
If I could be indulged, Prof, I'd like to thank Steve for his tireless work to promote this issue, and his tireless chasing me around to get me to see the value of this project. And I really did. To join the board shows how important I think it is. I believe we could have a voluntary register in Australia which has 2 orders of magnitude more data than currently exists, and would allow us to avoid pitfalls before we actually get into them. So for new players as well as the very experienced, the information that will come from this data not only makes it easier for us to be efficient clinicians, it makes us easier to provide appropriate care and avoid inappropriate care. So well done, Steve, and well done, Prof, and everyone else. I really hope this hits the ground running and we get a lot of new registrants tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate those kind words. I think that leaves us to end the webinar tonight. Thank you very much, everyone.
This is how you can contact us, and that'll be up on Peer and other forums shortly. So thank you all very much, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.